Tonight in 9 News, Royal Children's Emergency. Dozens of our most vulnerable kids in isolation after the cancer ward was declared Tier 1. Millions of rapid tests rolled out as Victoria records our deadliest day of the year. A frustrating setback for VCE students heading back to school. 4 infections linked to the Gat. Daniel Andrews under fire over an IBAC inquiry into his dealings with the Firefighters Union. First on 9, an innocent man left for dead during a violent home invasion. And Melbourne's housing crunch, why our famous backyards are shrinking.
This is Melbourne's 9 News with Peter Hitchener.
Good evening. Young, vulnerable patients are in lockdown this evening after the cancer ward at the Royal Children's was declared a Tier 1 exposure site. Let's head live to Adam Hegarty. Adam, what's the hospital had to say?
Well, Pete, they tell us contact tracers are tonight working in overdrive. It's a visiting parent who's tested positive. Meanwhile, parents, carers and those cancer patients are all right now isolating in their individual rooms, and they'll have to do that for the next 14 days. It's an incredibly stressful time for families, and it's also adding to the immense strain on our health system. The staff at the Royal Children's Hospital have a difficult dilemma. Let kids with cancer be with their family or protect them from COVID.
That's a fine balance between restricting visitors and not having any visitors or parents at all.
Tonight, the worst fear realised, a virus infiltration. The parent testing positive visited the cancer ward just days ago.
We're glad that we've got lots and lots of single rooms so we can isolate people quite safely.
Patients, their parents or carers in those small rooms, and they don't know if this parent was vaccinated.
All I can do is, as a healthcare professional, as a CEO of a hospital, is encourage people to get vaccinated as much as possible.
So hopefully we reduce the strain on hospitals and their patients. At first, a distraught Nicole Lee struggles to find the words. For 3 weeks, she sat in a ward, not with COVID, but a relapse disorder. Overworked staff at Epping's Northern Hospital too busy to tend to her, to the point she's uttering a phrase that has no place in healthcare.
Just want to help.
The collateral damage of our pandemic disaster. 525 COVID patients in hospital, 94 in ICU, 53 on a ventilator. For doctors, it's more than just numbers.
The situation in Victoria is that we're as bad as the Anzacs at Gallipoli. People don't seem to understand that.
It's isolating, it's scary. One moment everything's fine, the next moment everyone's wearing gowns and masks, and you can see the sweat pouring off them. You can see the anxiety and the exhaustion in people.
And while every day the government stands up, the demand is that they step up.
How can we be 18 months into a pandemic when the government is still not prepared? That is deeply concerning.
Though it's also deeply complex as the Health Minister turns the spotlight on Commonwealth funding. He says it's not so much beds or equipment, it's personnel.
ICU nurses and specialist staff to monitor people in hospital settings do not grow on trees.
Adam Hegarty, 9 News.
11 Victorians have lost their lives on our deadliest day of the third wave. The tragic toll emerged as millions of rapid antigen tests were ordered, fast-tracking COVID results to help Melbourne reopen. Stephanie Anderson with the latest.
With trials on track at level crossing projects,
put that in the mouth on top of your tongue.
2.2 million rapid tests have been ordered, bound for Victoria's healthcare system to bolster COVID screening.
In our hospitals, in our community health services, it will be used to manage close contacts.
From there, the plan is to expand their use to other high-risk settings like schools, childcare, prisons and emergency services, then workplaces and even major events, with the TGA's approval for rapid antigen technology to be used at home taking effect from November 1.
Wait about 15 minutes and you should have a test result back.
Priced between $10 and $22, the government isn't giving away how much they're spending on this bulk order, but it's keen to stress the standard method is still sticking around.
The PCR test is the backbone of our entire testing network, and we'll continue to ensure that we can deliver well over 70,000 plus tests a day.
In the past 24 hours, those swabs confirmed another 1,420 infections. Most were found in the northern suburbs, but the Delta spread in the east and southeast is still on the rise, and there's another 80 cases on the regional tally.
In total now across regional Victoria, 611 active cases.
Sadly, 11 deaths have been added to the state's toll, the largest daily increase since September last year. 6 women and 5 men lost their lives. Residents from Whittlesea, Hume, Moreland, Hobsons Bay, Darebin and Casey, 2 were at home.
If you show signs of COVID, however mild, please come forward and get tested.
Another 95,600 shots have been delivered across the state. 83.56% of Victorians over 16 are now single-dosed. 54.55% are double.
We're still well on track to hit the roadmap dates of 26th of October for the 70% double dose.
Stephanie joins me now from the airport. Steph, the New South Wales border rules are changing.
That's right, Pete. The current red zones in regional New South Wales will tonight become orange zones, and that means that Victorians wanting to cross the border will just have to get tested and isolate until they get a negative result. Meanwhile, the extreme risk zones in both Greater Sydney and the ACT will become red zones. Now, under that change, Victorians will still be the only ones eligible for a permit unless there's exceptional circumstances. They will have to quarantine at home for those full 14 days as well, but the main change there is their vaccination status will no longer be a factor as to whether or not they qualify for one of those permits. And Pete, all those changes take effect from midnight tonight.
OK, thank you. Stephanie Anderson at the airport. Hundreds of senior students are in isolation after 4 positive cases attended the GAT exam. Elizabeth Moss tells us it's a frustrating setback for many Year 12s who'd hoped to be back in class today.
It was supposed to be back to school, but school was shut again.
You just can't believe that, that it's happening.
After 3 hours of GAT testing, a total of 4 positive COVID results, including a student at Roxburgh College and Point Cook Senior Secondary College. Carmen Lyon's son Zach, who's studying VCAL, wasn't even at the test, but had to miss out on class today.
It's just so frustrating and disappointing. He's literally got weeks left of school. And who knows how long the school's going to be closed down for.
All 4 students were awaiting the results of their asymptomatic COVID test when they sat the exam.
It's never a risk-free environment, and it just won't be. You want to see 0, but 4 out of 85,000 is a pretty great success.
And Ringwood's Aquinas College was closed after a student's family member tested positive. They're still awaiting results. It's the first test for new close contact rules within schools, meaning not everyone on site will have to isolate for 14 days.
Working out which classroom a positive student may have been in, the students that were interacted with, we want to get the number to as minimal a number as possible.
Meanwhile, a first look tonight at the air purifiers being rolled out in Victorian schools. Hazel Glen College among the first to receive them.
Any strategies that can help prevent the spread of COVID in our classrooms for our students returning is absolutely a wonderful opportunity.
And some experts want even more protection. AusSage is calling for masks to be made mandatory for every student at school, no matter their age.
Unfortunately, since children under 12 can't get vaccinated, they are totally unprotected from COVID, and we don't know long term how it's going to impact our kids.
Elizabeth Moss, 9 News.
The Premier has dismissed pressure to stand down over an anti-corruption investigation into Victoria's fire services. Daniel Andrews insists he's always acted appropriately in his dealings to broker a resolution in a long-running industrial dispute with the Firefighters Union. Dougal Beattie reports.
Arriving at State Parliament, the Premier was immediately on the defensive.
As for standards and who set what, you can make your own judgments about that. I behave appropriately at all times.
Daniel Andrews grilled over a corruption probe into the state's fire services, asked whether he or his staff had been spoken to about the IBAC investigation.
Excuse me? Absolutely not. I'm rejecting the premise of your question.
The Age newspaper revealing the corruption watchdog was examining the conduct of the Premier and a senior public servant over their role in controversial deals that benefited the United Firefighters Union and its boss, Peter Marshall.
He spent his career telling everyone else to stand down who's under investigation by a corruption commission. Now he's under investigation. Well, of course he should stand down.
Why has the UFU been given every single thing they wanted by Daniel Andrews?
I know people get very excited about these issues. They were well ventilated. There was a lot of politicking done on them. Not much truth, not much fact.
Daniel Andrews refused to say whether he'd spoken to IBAC, citing the corruption watchdog's strict confidentiality powers.
If you want to know what IBAC's doing and who they're doing it with, then you need to speak to IBAC. He wanted me to offer you comments that I'm simply not going to offer you.
But the Premier's deputy let one slip.
You're a former Emergency Services Minister.
Yes.
Are you under investigation by IBAC?
Not that I'm aware of.
Unlike the corruption probe into Gladys Berejiklian, there is no suggestion of personal gain for Daniel Andrews, and IBAC hasn't confirmed if it's scrutinising the Premier.
I will not be doing anything other than my duty and what I am sworn to do.
Dougal Beattie, 9 News.
Gladys Berejiklian has emerged in public for the first time since her shock resignation. The former New South Wales Premier thanked her supporters and urged them to get behind her replacement. More from Mark Burrows.
A week ago, the most powerful woman in the country. Today, Gladys Berejiklian trying to be incognito. Red shopping bag, but the trademark blazer was a giveaway. And it's here locals have been doing some redecorating.
I just want to say again a big thank you to everybody. It's been enormous comfort to know people care, and I want the community to get behind Premier Perrottet, as I know they will. He will be an outstanding leader, and at this important time we need everybody to follow the Premier's words and make sure that we come out of this lockdown as safely as possible.
The electorate office is looking more like a florist. The shop front wallpapered in messages of support.
I just want everybody to know that I'm going to read every single card and every single message. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
No questions were taken, no response to the ICAC inquiry into whether she encouraged corrupt conduct by former boyfriend Daryl Maguire.
Do what it needs to do. None of us, whether we're the Prime Minister or the Premier or the Queen of England, are above, have certain standards which we have to uphold.
And here no shortage of Gladys loyalists who believe ICAC has brought down a great Premier.
It's a shame because she has done an amazing amount of good stuff.
I think it's a very sad day.
Despite all the messages urging her to make a comeback, Gladys Berejiklian has shown not the slightest hint she's interested in federal politics. Gladys for PM is just a case of wishful thinking by the faithful.
After a few hours with her staff, a handwritten note was posted on the front door, thanking people for their support. In part it read, "Serving the people of New South Wales has been the privilege of my life. Love and best wishes, Gladys."
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
5 days on from her resignation, the flowers keep coming. Voters here still in shock after the member for Willoughby walked away from the leadership. Mark Burrows, 9 News.
Tony Abbott has arrived in Taiwan as its foreign minister calls on Australia to help his country combat China's aggression. His visit is likely to enrage Beijing, which is waging a campaign of military intimidation against the island nation. Here's Chris Ullman.
A former Prime Minister goes where many fear to tread.
Welcome to Taiwan.
Tony Abbott has landed in Taiwan, an independent democracy of 23 million people, long claimed by China. And Beijing has recently amped up its military threats against the island, with 150 warplanes crossing into Taiwan's air defence zone in the last week. Aggression which pushed the country's foreign minister into a defiant declaration.
If China is going to launch a war against Taiwan, we will fight to the end.
And plead for help.
We would like to engage in security or intelligence exchanges with other like-minded partners, Australia included, so that Taiwan is better prepared to deal with the war situation.
War might not be China's intention, but this is a dangerous game.
What there is a really high risk of is some kind of an accident. When you have this many planes in the air, when you have this many Taiwanese fighters responding.
Beijing's aggression is unsettling the entire Indo-Pacific. Yesterday, Malaysia called in the Chinese ambassador to protest Chinese vessels encroaching on its waters. It's one of many disputes. 6 countries have territorial claims over the South China Sea, and part of it is an international waterway. But China claims almost all of it, ignoring an international ruling that there is no legal basis for its claim. And Indonesia has been building its military presence around islands in its north to push back against incursions by Chinese fishing boats.
This is our territory. There's no dispute, no claim.
China hasn't ruled out using military force to take Taiwan, and the US has pledged to defend it. And if that happens, Australia will face an impossible choice. Until then, diplomatic lines will have to fill the void.
Our job as a nation in our region is to work cooperatively with our region, which is exactly what we're doing.
And praying for peace. Chris Ullman, 9 News.
Now with a look ahead to sport. Clint Stanaway.
Good evening, Pete. Thanks so much for that. Tonight in sport, the Cats turn to a magic man to boost their fortunes. Corey Norris.
Clint, Eddie Betts' time at Carlton is over. The retired goal sneakers join Geelong in a coaching capacity. We'll have all the details later in sport.
See you soon. Thanks, Corey. Plus, the D's add even more grunt to that flag-winning midfield.
I'm 26 and I feel like I'm coming into the prime of my career.
A green light finally for the Ashes, but there's still one box to tick, and why this gun baller will lose $500,000 every time the Nets play at home. That's all coming up soon in Sport, Pete.
OK, thank you, Clint. Next, stabbed and left for dead, an innocent man in the wrong place at the wrong time. His powerful plea to catch those responsible. Plus, a former Matilda's shocking claim of sexual harassment in the national team, and why reuniting owners with their lost pets is about to get much easier. Football Australia's CEO has jumped onto the front foot, saying he applauds former Matilda Lisa De Vanna and Riley Dobson for their bravery after the pair made allegations of abuse and a toxic culture in soccer.
We have two players who've shown great courage to speak about and to share their personal experiences. Lisa and Riley, we see you and we hear you.
De Vanna has claimed she was bullied and sexually harassed during her 150-game career for Australia. The governing body insists it's addressing cultural issues of the past as the game moves towards the 2023 Women's World Cup in Australia. France and the United States are edging closer to reconciliation. The French president has agreed to meet with Joe Biden later this month. America's latest defence pact with Australia and Britain caused serious diplomatic damage when it sunk a submarine deal between Paris and Canberra.
Joe Biden now remembers the importance of France as an ally.
We will see. We will catch up during the G20, and I think it would be the right occasion to see how we can re-engage.
The truce emerged after Emmanuel Macron met with US Secretary of State. Facebook is under intense scrutiny after a whistleblower fronted US Congress demanding it be held to account. Amelia Adams says her explosive testimony included proof that the social media company knows its products are addictive and toxic to children.
It's being hailed as Big Tech's big tobacco moment.
When we realised big tobacco was hiding the harms it caused, the government took action. I implore you to do the same here.
Former Facebook product manager Frances Haugen telling lawmakers the social media giant puts profits before people with devastating results.
I'm here today because I believe Facebook's products harm children, stoke division, and weaken our democracy.
Haugen leaked tens of thousands of internal documents, among them Facebook's own research showing Instagram can cause peer pressure, body image problems and suicidal thoughts, especially in teenage girls.
So Facebook knows that they are leading young users to anorexia content. The company intentionally hides vital information from the public, from the US government, and from governments around the world.
Powerful testimony uniting senators from both sides of politics.
The damage to self-interest and self-worth inflicted by Facebook today will haunt a generation.
From the Facebook chief, many of the claims don't make any sense. It's frustrating to see the good work we do get mischaracterised. Among the suggested reforms, overhauling Facebook's algorithms, which drive targeted and often toxic content, essentially returning to the early days when the site was simply about connecting people. It'll now be up to lawmakers to decide whether to turn the evidence into regulations. Mark Zuckerberg has been invited to testify. He's faced the wrath of Washington before, but nothing seems to change.
Mark Zuckerberg ought to be looking at himself in the mirror today.
The buck stops with him.
In the United States, Amelia Adams, 9 News.
If you find a lost dog or cat, getting it back to its rightful owner is about to become much easier. As Madeline Slattery explains, local vets will soon be able to reunite pets and their humans without council involvement.
No one ever wants to lose a pet, especially when the process to get it back is clunky.
We can scan the microchip, find the details, find out who the owner is, but we're not actually allowed to contact the owner to say, come and pick up your dog.
But this time next year, rehoming should be easier. Legislation put to Parliament today states that all vets and animal shelters will be able to directly reunite animals with the owners.
A lot more straightforward, a lot less problematic for owners and pets.
Animal welfare groups, including the Lost Dogs Home, have been pushing for the reform.
We get somewhere in between 14,000 to 15,000 pets arrive at our doors every single year at the Lost Dogs Home. So that will really ease the pressure on us.
At the moment, there are significant fines if animals aren't secured properly. Some councils could charge close to $400 if a pet is found roaming free at night time. But these changes could result in fewer penalties being handed down.
If an animal is surrendered perhaps to a vet may seek a payment for that, but they cannot compel that payment.
While vets say their focus is on a speedy reunion, animal shelters have this message.
Implore everybody out there to please get your pets microchipped.
Madeline Slattery, 9 News.
Lavinia's here now. The weather certainly bounced back today, Lavinia.
Oh, the spring roller coaster is open for business, Pete. After a chilly Tuesday, Wednesday has delivered beautiful blue skies and a higher maximum. After dipping to 8 degrees, the city peaked at 21.6, so a couple of degrees warmer than average, and that comes off a warmer than average September for most of the country. Only the small areas in green didn't exceed their average maximums. Victoria came out 1.3 degrees warmer than average. But a cool change is moving in through western parts of the state right now, and that'll bring showers and a cooler day tomorrow. Won't take long to rebound though, and I'll have those details for you a little later, Pete.
OK, thank you, Lavinia. Up next, the local council accused of pure greed, charging $5,000 for car parks converted to outdoor dining. Plus, housing crunch, why Melbourne backyards are shrinking. And the passenger plane going nowhere.
9 News, brought to you by Allianz. Behind you for what's ahead.
The maimed victim of a bloodied home invasion says he forgives his attackers after they stabbed him in the arm and face during a bungled burglary. Police say Ringwood baker Sing T was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Crime reporter Lana Murphy.
Masked, armed and ready for a fight, these thugs unleashed a violent rage. But after storming into this Noble Park home, they got the wrong guy.
I didn't feel half my body, so I knew I was stabbed because I could see all the blood.
Sing T's scars show just how close he came to losing his life when two strangers knocked on his friend's door and stormed in demanding money.
It just looked like one of those Rambo knives, one of those big, yeah.
The 39-year-old's friend bolted to the bedroom, then suddenly Mr. T was tackled and stabbed repeatedly, the knife slicing through his arm and into his face.
And then I managed to push him through the door and close the door, where then he kicked through the door and then, came charging for the second attack. He just said, "I'm going to kill you."
The Caucasian intruder slashed his chest and leg before ransacking the Arden Drive home with his partner and leaving their victim for dead. It's been more than a year since the attack here, and still the intruders' identities remain a mystery. Mr. T wants them off the streets, but incredibly, he says he's also forgiven them.
I don't want to judge them until I know, what circumstances they're under.
Detectives aren't so forgiving.
It's a real worry that these people, if they're not brought to justice or brought through the court system, that they'll continue to act in this way.
The attack was at 4 p.m. on September 8 last year. Mr. T suffered serious nerve damage. The popular Ringwood East baker still doesn't have the full use of his right hand, but is looking on the bright side.
I'm just waiting to heal completely, so yeah. And after that, it'd just be a cool story to tell people.
Lana Murphy, 9 News.
A former Victorian police officer has pleaded guilty to sexually assaulting his young stepdaughter near Beechworth in the 1970s. The now 88-year-old Robert Scott, who was extradited from Britain last year, today admitted he abused the girl from when she was 3 to 9 years old. Kim Elzabak spent 20 years campaigning for investigators to bring her abuser home. She broke down as he uttered the word guilty. He'll be sentenced later this year. The city of Yarra has been called money hungry for asking hospitality venues to pay thousands of dollars to maintain outdoor dining areas. Businesses say it's another blow before they've had the chance to get back on their feet. More from Justine Conway.
In the city of Yarra, the hospitality industry is reeling.
These fees will crush the local economy.
Ignoring pleas from venue operators, the council will charge thousands of dollars a year for every car space used for outdoor dining. Because her crab shack's on a main road, Katie Marin will have to pay the premium, $5,000 per parklet or $10,000 for the two she needs to make opening worthwhile.
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money I don't have.
Mayor Gabrielle De Vitry used her casting vote to pass the motion, saying the full fees won't come into effect until October next year.
As business goes back to normal and as it begins to thrive, we need to be able to ensure that that lost revenue is made up somehow.
Councillor Stephen Jolly remains strongly opposed.
Why Yarra has to have the highest fees for struggling small businesses, I do not know.
Venue operators say they think they know. Adam Betts has been fighting to get his parklets reinstated after the council reverted them into car parks 9 months ago.
I think they took away the parklet, which was against our wishes, so they can continue receiving revenue from the car parking.
Meanwhile, in the neighbouring city of Melbourne, the council has voted to continue waiving outdoor dining permits while giving businesses $1.1 million to build new spaces.
We're deferring all of those permit fees and costs until we see the city back up and running and the buzz is back.
They've actually had hundreds of millions of dollars of support from the state government that other councils haven't had.
Traders impacted by the fees say they won't roll over and pay without a fight. They're now looking at all options to challenge the council's decision, including class action.
If they proceed with these fees, they will be closing the doors of very many small businesses.
Justine Conway, 9 News.
Foul play hasn't been ruled out after fire destroyed around 30 buses at a public transport depot in Rome in the early hours of Tuesday morning. The flames spread quickly as most of the vehicles were old and powered by methane. And stopping traffic in India, a passenger plane has become lodged under a bridge on a highway near Delhi Airport. Decommissioned by Air India, the aircraft had recently been sold off and was being towed to its new owner, lucky them, when the truckie ran into trouble. The great Australian dream is rapidly shrinking to make way for more affordable housing. As property reporter Chris Kohler explains, Melbourne's backyards, once a suburban pride and joy, are becoming an expensive luxury.
It's normally the time of year backyard cricket gets underway. But there's a problem. Backyards are disappearing on a mass scale.
Absolutely, it is significant and it's clearly material.
20 years ago, Melbourne's median block size was almost 650 square metres. Since then, it's shrunk by more than 210 metres. That's almost the size of a standard tennis court. Gone.
We can see this trend increasing, absolutely.
This month, new blocks have an average size of just 350 square metres. These homes in Williams Landing barely have room for a barbecue. The neighbours are literally at arm's length. And here in Tarneet, there looks to be plenty of space, but they're being built shoulder to shoulder.
There are a number of reasons for this. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is simply affordability. There's also other factors around simply scarcity of land.
Aerial images show the issue and put greater focus on the need for communal green spaces.
It's really important to look at the interplay between the public and private land, so that needs to be compensated with more parks and more shared spaces.
Backyards are already becoming an unaffordable luxury, but as the price of land continues to rise, just how much smaller can the blocks become?
We are seeing houses being built on block sizes of around 200 square metres in some parts of Australia. So it does look like this trend has some way to go.
It's the latest difficult delivery from the rising property market. Chris Kohler, 9 News.
Love is in the air for this striking bird at Healesville Sanctuary. The male regent bowerbird is building an elaborate amphitheatre where he'll perform a dance to woo a mate. The extravagant performance lasts 2 weeks. Fingers crossed it works. International travel will be more complicated when Australia opens up to the world. Up next, the app to help travellers navigate their flying future. Plus, the Russian film crew literally shooting for the stars. And the protective magpie showing joggers just who's boss. The share market reversed early gains today, while the Australian dollar also backtracked. Chris Kohler again.
News of an interest rate hike in New Zealand and a mortgage lending crackdown here in Australia sent shares tumbling at lunch. The market lost 0.6% in the end and Commonwealth Bank fell 2%. Elsewhere, travel companies came back to earth with a thud after their recent climb, while Afterpay regained some of the ground it lost yesterday. And word of a class action lawsuit against A2 Milk wiped 7% off the company. The share price has nearly halved this year, and lawyers say the company didn't disclose enough of the bad news early. The Australian dollar was mostly lower. It's buying 72 US cents, 62 euro cents and 53 British pence.
Deprived of new and exciting places to visit during lockdown, many Australians are dreaming of international travel. But there's also a desire to bring foreign visitors here, with the cash-strapped tourism industry hoping they still want to come. Sophie Walsh has more.
David Hammond can't wait to share this view with the world again.
We're really excited about having foreign visitors back. They're 65% of our market.
But when Australia reopens to international tourists next year, there's no guarantee they'll want to come.
International travellers are not coming to Australia if they have to quarantine at this end, at home or not.
Tourism bosses want home quarantine scrapped by March to speed up the industry's recovery.
Vaccinated travellers don't require quarantine depending upon what country you're coming from.
Travel in a post-pandemic era has become complex, but this is what you can expect. Qantas will require 4 COVID tests, 1 before departure, another before your return flight, and 2 more during your 7-day home quarantine, plus digital proof of a vaccination. If you're heading to the US, you'll need proof you've had the jab and a negative COVID test prior to arrival, but you won't need to quarantine when you get there. Before you jet off to the UK, you must book and pay for a COVID test to take 2 days after landing. If you're clear, you won't need to isolate. In Europe, rules vary depending on the country, but most require proof of vaccination and a PCR test less than 48 hours old. Closer to home, Bali plans to reopen to Aussies from March next year, but beware, currently international arrivals must show proof of hotel bookings for a mandatory 8-day quarantine, while Fiji will welcome back fully vaccinated tourists from next month, with Qantas and Virgin expected to schedule flights in December. To help simplify the process, Qantas and Jetstar are rolling out a smartphone app where passengers can prove they're vaccinated and COVID negative. Qantas also anticipates more travel-starved Aussies will want direct flights to get to their destinations sooner. So they're pressing ahead with plans for a fleet of A350s to fly non-stop from Sydney to London and Sydney to New York. After waiting 19 long months, who wants to waste time on a stopover? Sophie Walsh, 9 News.
Movie making has hit the final frontier. A Russian actor and director have blasted into space on a mission to make a film in 12 days. Brett McLeod with the story.
With faces beaming, the latest arrivals to the International Space Station make history.
Everybody, I love you all. We made it here.
They've come a very long way in a short time.
Of Soyuz MS-19 with an actress and her producer beginning a journey to the International Space Station.
Actor Yulia Peresild and director Klim Shipenko with a very real test of their 4 months of training to boldly do what no man or woman has done before, make a feature film in space. Called Challenge, Yulia plays a surgeon sent to the space station to save a crew member. All stages of the lift-off and flight went as planned. The cosmonaut piloting them on today's journey, who will also act in the movie, did have to deal with one real-life drama after a communications failure meant he had to manually guide the Soyuz spacecraft to the docking bay. Inside, as she learned to deal with the effects of zero gravity, Yulia spoke in awe about their journey.
I'm still in a dream. I still feel that it's all just a dream and I'm asleep. Yes, it is almost impossible to believe that this actually all came to reality.
The voyage also gives these filmmakers the jump on Tom Cruise, who plans to make a film in space next year, reminiscent of when Russia beat America in putting the first person in space. They have 12 days to make the film before the return journey. For now, like no actor before her, Yulia Peresild is really up there with the biggest stars. Brett McLeod, 9 News.
Now to a magpie that deserves an award for protecting its patch. The intruder is a Sydney man in running gear on the right of the screen. The bird swoops to warn him off, but the trespasser drops his keys and foolishly comes back to pick him up. Even more unwisely, he later returns for a second run in. There he goes now. And no, shouting at this feathered friend didn't do any good at all. Clint's here now with sport.
Let's do it, Pete. Thanks so much for that. After the break, Geelong's high five as a swag of big stars re-sign. Luke's second chance, St Kilda's trash as Melbourne's treasure. The plush digs that should guarantee there's no whining from England's cricketers. And a wildcard battle between baseball's heavy hitters. Melbourne has added even more firepower to its premiership-winning midfield with delisted Saint Luke Dunstan signing a 2-year deal. Let's head live to Corey Norris in our trade room. Corey, Dunstan thinks he can add much more than just insurance.
Yeah, it's crazy to think, Clint, that Luke Dunstan was given his marching orders by the Saints at the end of the season, particularly coming off a year where he polled 11 Brownlow votes in just 12 games. But look, he openly admits that he fell out of favour with coach Brett Ratton, mostly around his ball use. But at the Demons, of course, he'll be reunited with former St Kilda coach Alan Richardson, and his tough inside style of game will certainly help cover the retirement of Nathan Jones.
I'm 26 and I feel like I'm coming into the prime of my career. And just the fact that I haven't sort of tasted much success or played any finals to date was sort of a massive draw card.
Meanwhile, on the trade front, just the one deal rubber stamped today with Port Adelaide securing GWS forward Jeremy Finlayson. The 25-year-old has signed a 3-year deal with the power for a future third-round draft pick. Port adding to its key forward depth with the expectation that Peter Laddams will head to Sydney. And Fremantle has confirmed that they've offered Geelong speedster Jordan Clark a 4-year deal, but there's a bit of wheeling and dealing to go with this one. The Cats today rejecting that they demanded the Dockers' number 8 draft pick, but over the next couple of days or so, Clint, we can expect to see Jordan Clark become a Docker.
Thanks so much, Corey Norris. Still on the footy in Geelong, it appears has won the race to secure Carlton legend Eddie Betts, who's joining the Cats as an assistant coach. And it's expected the 350-game goal sneak will play a key role in the club luring his former Crows teammate Tyson Stengel. The Cats confirming they're among a number of clubs now interested in the small forward who starred in the Sandful this season. Certainly been a busy old period for the club, today announcing 5 re-signings, including Reece Stanley and Gary Rowan. This year's Ashes series has been saved with an 11th hour deal struck between England players and officials. As Alicia Mewling tells us, Joe Root has agreed to lead his side into battle in Australia after quarantine compromise was met.
Threats of an Ashes boycott have been bubbling away for weeks.
Tim Payne can spout off as much nonsense as he wants.
But finally, a breakthrough. England skipper Joe Root declaring it's game on this summer. Official confirmation is expected in the coming days, following crisis meetings which reassured touring players they wouldn't be stuck in hotel rooms during their 2 weeks quarantine. And while a deal to allow families to quarantine in a Yarra Valley resort ahead of the Boxing Day test has all but been ticked off, there's still work to be done ahead of the first test in Brisbane on December 8.
There needs to be a COVID-safe plan that hasn't been signed off yet.
Meanwhile, Australia's T20 squad will soon arrive in Abu Dhabi ahead of the World Cup, a trophy which has so far eluded them. And despite his horror IPL season, David Warner has the full backing of his skipper.
Yep, absolutely. He's one of the best players to have ever played the game for Australia. He would have loved to be playing for Hyderabad, no doubt. I know that he's still training away, and yeah, he'll be good to go.
Following successful knee surgery, Aaron Finch is expecting to open with Warner. It won't be the biggest challenge he's been set recently after the birth of his first child, daughter Esther.
It's going to be probably a little bit tougher leaving tomorrow, but Amy's got it under control at the moment. She's going beautifully as a mum.
Alicia Muling, 9 News.
One of the NBA's biggest names could be forced to the sidelines over his refusal to get the jab. Just 2 weeks from the new season, Brooklyn superstar Kyrie Irving is unvaccinated. In New York, you can't play or train unless you've had both doses, meaning Irving could become a part-time player and only feature in away matches. Irving has a $48 million contract with the Nets, but could lose around $500,000 every home match he fails to play. Red Sox fans have scored bragging rights over their old rivals, the Yankees. The two powerhouse clubs went head-to-head in the American League wildcard match, and spurred on by a full house at Fenway Park, Boston reigns supreme.
Bogart sends a drive to center field and deep. Gardner turns around and watches it fly!
Those Red Sox closing it out 6-2, setting up a showdown with Tampa Bay in the division series. That's the latest sport. I'll see you tomorrow, Pete.
OK, good work. Thank you, Clint. Time to check back now with Lavinia. Today's beautiful weather, a one-off apparently.
Yes, Pete, but it will bounce back before long. Showers are moving through western parts of the state right now. And for Melbourne, well, their timing is pretty good. Most of the showers will fall while the city sleeps. I'll have all the details for you next.
Download the free 9 News app. Access all the news you'll ever need, wherever you are, when you want it, at your fingertips. Watch breaking news as it happens. And to get 9 News straight to your inbox, sign up at 9news.com.au.
Hello again, and spring was back in business today and looking an absolute picture. After an overnight low of 8 degrees, the city warmed up to 21.6. Hasn't cooled off much. It's still sitting on 20 degrees outside. The skies cleared overnight and the winds dropped as well, so it got quite chilly, particularly further away from the city. Yarra Glen, Ferny Creek, Tullamarine and Avalon, they all dropped to 5 degrees. Epping and Geelong got down to 6, but once the sunshine got to work, the mercury rebounded to reach the low 20s. And for Ferny Creek, 17. Inland areas had a frosty start to the day. Rutherglen and Ballarat dropped to 1 degree, Bendigo 2, Horsham got down to 0, but daytime temperatures have mostly been above average. For northern and eastern parts of the state, maximums have been in the 20s and into the high 20s through the Mallee. The cool change is moving in from the west. It was slightly cooler there, 17 degrees at Portland, and it's just recorded a couple of millimetres in showers. Cloud has been building ahead of the cold front. It'll travel across the state tonight, and Melbourne is right in the sweet spot. The bulk of the showers should fall overnight, clearing by dawn tomorrow and leaving us with a dry day, although it'll be quite a bit cooler and not as sunny as today. But winds will switch back to warmer northerlies on Friday and the cloud will break up, so we won't have to wait long for more beautiful spring weather. But tonight's cool change will bring some gusty winds, particularly through alpine areas. The Bureau has issued a severe weather warning for that part of the state, with a chance of wind gusts of up to 100 kilometres an hour. And the winds will stay quite strong across the Alps tomorrow and also along the coast before easing later in the day. Isolated showers will linger on and south of the ranges, contracting to the coast by the evening, so it'll be mostly dry, but a lot more cloud about than today. Overnight temperatures won't be as low, although still quite chilly at Ballarat and also Horsham, minimums of 3 degrees, but daytime temperatures will take quite a hit. Most spots are only expected to reach the mid-teens, slightly warmer along the Murray, 21 at Mildura, the high teens elsewhere, and also the Far East, a top of 17 at Orbost. Showers are expected to move into Melbourne's southern and western suburbs around 10 o'clock tonight. They should clear out by dawn, hanging around a little longer through eastern suburbs. And most spots should accumulate 4 to 6 millimetres, so 2 or 3 tonight, then another 2 or 3 tomorrow morning. Once they clear, we can expect a mostly cloudy day under moderate to fresh westerly breezes and quite cool, dropping to 6 or 7 overnight, 9 for eastern Bayside suburbs, then maximums of 15 and 16 tomorrow. Geelong should reach 17 after an overnight low of 7. It'll all be forgotten on Friday as it warms up to a mostly sunny top of 21 degrees, up to 23 on Saturday, and it'll be dry for most of the day with showers expected later on, up to 4 millimetres. Showers throughout the day on Sunday, up to 8 millimetres. Cooler again as well, just 15 degrees. 15 again on Monday with nothing more than a sprinkle. Fine on Tuesday and 20 degrees, but we could get some heavier falls next Wednesday, but staying mild, a top of 21 degrees. So showers tonight, up to 6 millimetres in the city, but they should clear by dawn. Then a mostly cloudy day under some chilly westerly breezes and a top of 16 degrees. Sadly, Pete, a much cloudier day is on the way.
Yes, but we can hang on for one day and then it's going to be good again.
We'll have to. We don't have a choice.
Correct. Thank you, Lavinia. And Melbourne, that's what's news this Wednesday. Tracy's next with the current affair. Enjoy your evening and good night.